The sudden attack by Hamas on Saturday has not only brought numerous casualties on Israel attacks in Gaza, but also led to similarly dead retaliatory attacks by Israel forces. And to get update on the latest development in Gaza and the implications of the crisis and Palestine, we will talk to international political observer of Synergy Policies, Ibu Dinna Prapto Raharja, who are currently with us in TVRI World Studio. Thank you, Bu Dinna, for joining us today. With the conflict now happening, and what do you see the international community's views and response to this conflict in Gaza and Palestine?
I think the overall response to this crisis is still too minimal. Minimal and very concerning in my view. One of the reasons is that it's only talking about their own citizens and the safety of their people traveling or living in the area of the crisis. Very little is being talked about the right of statehood in Palestine, and too many discussions also about whether or not Palestine is wrong as an authority in this matter, why they cannot control Hamas, for instance. And the other angle of discussion is the reaction of the United States, and sort of like everybody's waiting what's going to happen as a retaliation, which I think is not a good sign. We are not supposed to provoke solidarity or violence. Never. It's always a sad story whenever we see casualties of human beings everywhere of any nations. Especially in this case, we know that Israel and Palestine have had long years of conflicts, and very little has been done by the international community.
Yeah, this has been like a very long history between the Palestine and Israeli. And you, like you said earlier, so you can see that this is more like a self-centered one as well, where people, public, want to see like what next, and what next. Mm-hmm. So it's more like that. So we've seen the Biden statement recently on the conflict, on the Hamas attack, and on Biden's vows to support Israel with funds and weaponry. The U.S. Democrat government has frequently been in opposition to main Israeli government's policy. So what do you think, what makes it different this time then?
I really hope that the United States will think twice about sending resources to Israel. One, to make sure that this problem is not escalating into broader violence in the region. More weapons, more money sent to Israel means more attacks and more violence. And Israel has been, what should I say? What's the nicer word of saying very aggravated, doing aggravated murders in different places. We've seen attacks being done by Israel before, and very little has been done to stop it. I guess Biden, just before this crisis happened, already mentioned that he is going to come back to the two-state solution for Palestine and revive again the peace talk between Israel and Palestine. He should remember that and keep that in mind before even responding that he is going to support Israel at all cost. We all wait for the United States wisdom in responding to this crisis. I guess domestically, the United States has many factors to consider on. Budget-wise, the United States is very in shortage at this moment. Without this, solidarity with Israel, the United States is facing government shutdowns because of needing financial approval from Congress. And this is not, this is partly because of the Ukraine crisis. Another reason is because of the changing geopolitics. So why don't we not put everything into one pot of violence and action-reaction that's very reactive? This is a moment, actually, not only for the United States, but also for all of us to start thinking that in this very moment, we should stop reacting too fast and look back and think about a more constructive approach to crisis like this.
Right. Since you also mentioned about the two-state solutions, so what do you think, what should be the efforts for the long-term solutions to this conflict ongoing in Gaza and the Palestinians? Does this two-state solutions remain relevant until today?
Two-state solution serves an important purpose, which is the right of Palestine for statehood. And that was the promise of international community back in, not only in 1967, when the UN was there, present, and assure Palestinians that they deserve that right. Back in 1990s, through series of peace agreements in the Middle East, including the one between Israel, Palestine, and the United States in between, there has been Oslo agreements, 1 and 2. Both of these agreements agreed that the solution for the conflict is two-state solution. So it's only in the after that fails, turns out that the implementation and all the what do you call it, the consistency of enforcing that peace process failed, that everybody start thinking about maybe it's about the faults of Palestinians, it's a problem of the Arab countries, which I think we should look back again to who is not being confident that this is the best way to go. Israel had promised the world, I should repeat again, Israel promised the world back in 1967 and then back in the through Oslo agreements that they are going to give the chance to Palestinians to govern over themselves and retract themselves from areas that they govern. So let's come back to that to avoid worsening the situation.
Yeah. So if we look back, May 2021, Israel attacked Al-Aqsa Mosque, and also 21st of May 2021, there was also a ceasefire, right? And it also says that perhaps this conflict is also like a hit back for Palestine as like a self-defense for themselves. So there have also been calls for ceasefire. Will it be effective as Israel has considered the attack as a declaration of war from Hamas or Palestine, you think?
The answer comes back to that consistency of being true to the commitments made on two-state solution. Hamas or PLA or PLO or other neighboring countries only look for the commitments from Israel and also its ally, the United States. Unless the statehood to Palestine is secured and is guaranteed, then ceasefire would do what? It's only temporary, waiting time. And we've seen for how many years now? Almost 30 years since Oslo agreements, that Jewish settlements continue to expand. And not only that, the military strength of Israel is pumped to the point that access to civilian jobs, mobility of people is being very restrained. Gaza is one of the areas that's under Oslo agreements secured as an area for Palestine. And yet what you see now, just the report is saying that Gaza is now going to be blockaded by Israelis. So again, where is the consistency? Let's recall all the agreements that's been made. The UN needs to be strong in saying, just refer to all these documents instead of trying to make another consensus, another agreements, because it's going to just waste of time. Ceasefire will yield to another violence if people don't trust. Where are you heading?
Referring back to all the agreements that have been made is one of the key. So what roles do you think should big nations and international organizations play in supporting settlement of conflict in Gaza and Palestine?
Number one in any conflicts is to protect civilians. Civilians need not only access to food, water, mobility, livelihood. Civilians also need to make sure that they are not going to be victims of or criminalization of civilians. This is what we seen missing in the dialogues amid this crisis. Civilians here are seen as, you know, just part of the act of terrorism. That's how the Canada mentioned and how the US mentioned. Come on, we have to be clear. There's a Treaty of Rome that specifically mentioned even if a state declare war, and we recall last night Benjamin Netanyahu from Israel specifically said declaring war, even under war you have rules, and that rule says you have to protect civilians. Any action to suffocate civilians is definitely a crime against humanity.
Right. And now, in your opinion, how will the situations in Gaza affect relations between countries in the Middle East, you think?
Well, countries in the Middle East have been too long under the situation of power politics. And before the broke out of Ukraine-Russia conflict, all attention about war has always been to that region. This is an area so fragile with tensions, conflicts, violence, that I think everybody's already very tired of it. They are basically brothers and sisters because some of them are relatives. Arab and Israel's have a long history of feuds because some of them come from different areas, not living in the area, while others have lived there for years. So I can imagine in an era of globalization, where economic cooperation blooms in other parts of regions, Middle East continue to suffer from not having that opportunity. So they are looking for peace somehow. And yet you see how difficult it has been. Some past books have mentioned about the curse of being in a land of wealthy resources, right? Especially oil and fossil fuels. But let's put this more in the bigger context now. We can no longer discuss this as resource only. The world is suffering also from climate change. And Secretary Guterres also mentioned a few weeks ago how the world has failed the target on climate change because we passed the heat of 1.5 degree Celsius. That means it's already, destruction is there. So why don't we give a chance to draw back again and create a different atmosphere in the Middle East? If we allow another sets of weapons, tensions, conflicts coming back to this region, what will happen is everybody's gonna forget that there's a bigger agenda globally that's very, very urgent. Wars create gas emission. So if we open another fronts of war, aside from wars already happening in other parts of the world that's still not settled, you are creating worse situation for humankind, not just in the Middle East, but for all of us, including Indonesia.
Yeah. Right. In addition to that, the impacts on the Middle East countries, what do you think also, and how do you see actually in the Middle East countries, their responses to this crisis?
The response of Middle East countries so far, they are very cautious. I think they realize how, they're trying to read, I think, where the US is going with all of this. Just before all this happened, we've seen how Saudi Arabia already has planned to reconcile its relationship, peace agreements with Israel. And some articles are saying that Hamas is trying to rebel against that, making sure that Arab is not doing that peace agreement. But if you are consistent in seeing that Hamas is not Palestine, Hamas is just one group, then all countries in the Middle East should should not see this as a threat to their being as sovereign nation states. They are much bigger than Hamas. So they should have more strategy, they should have more confidence that there are other ways of solving the conflict other than, also doing a conflict.
Correct, yes. So our last questions for you is that from your observations, how do you see the international community's, particularly efforts to facilitate dialogue between conflicting parties in Gaza and the Palestine, and how does it actually affect on the peace process?
I really hope that the United States issue new statements saying that a different angle of looking at this conflict, and recall that as a responsible member of the United Nations Security Council, it has to avoid violence and crimes against humanity, war crimes at any cost. That's one hope. Another hope is that other big countries, large economies like China and other countries in Global South, for instance, they also raise voice, including Indonesia, I think, raise voice that's beyond just thinking about their own citizens, and start talking about the need to work together to prevent broader conflict to blow up in the Middle East. It's time for cooperation now. The world is suffering a lot. Lots of countries are in recession, and as I said, we are in a climate change crisis. There are bigger agenda to think about, and we have to help Palestinian people not to be the victims of Hamas carelessness.
All right, Ibu Dinna Prapto Raharja, once again, thank you for your time today with us and TVRI World Studio and sharing with us. And after the break, we will come back with many more news from Indonesia and, of course, from around the world. Stay with us.